Or is it mats on the floor only, like the photos show?
I think it's just mats on the floor.
That's what I would guess.
Yeah. And it's 20 additional people potentially could be
So for
there.
24 hours a day, you can be on your mat on the floor.
Yeah, in a warehouse, or
About
maybe
time
even
you showed up.
It's
Yeah.
80 people,
Maybe
it's
they're
80
full.
people, right?
80 total,
Yeah, 80.
20 more than the rivers, than
Right.
1220.
I'm staying over at the Salvation Army. I was out for a couple of weeks because it was over Christmas,
Uh-huh.
and I was buying presents for my kids, so, you know, they only have a limited amount of space. They give you a bin. So when I went back there, they can't seem to find it, so a girl that was working
Backpack's got a
tonight
shirt.
that, when I talked to her on the bus like about a week ago, she said that she had taken it and put it in Connex, which I guess is like a train car
Oh,
they
yeah.
have on site. But, yeah, I hope it's
Wow.
there.
That's ridiculous. Bummer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also noticed that somebody else was mentioning like somebody's backpacks had been stolen, you know, last night. And I was thinking, they used to have a security guard, I believe, that was there, that's no longer there now.
At 1220?
At the Salvation Army. Yeah.
What, the Laurel Street one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they were
Wow.
doing across from the school.
Right, yeah. Okay, so why then, this has been fun already,
Thank you.
and the carrots are fantastic. So Paul, why don't you introduce yourself and then see, and let us know what we need to know that you can share, and then if you have questions, then we're happy to answer those. In short, this is one of the best cities for homeless people, and they all come here because of our services. And in fact, they're bussed in from all over the country, including
Somewhere
from-
else, they come from somewhere else.
Yeah, they're not. Nobody here has ever had lived here until they found out that the food on Bombs meal was so good, and they all hopped on planes and came here.
Yeah, that's why we were so glad when you left San Francisco. Took everybody with you.
Yeah. I've noticed that the homeless population decreased by half a year after I left.
Yeah, so I'm Paul Boden, and I came up off the streets in the 80s in San Francisco and was part of the Union of the Homeless back in the day. And, we started a group in San Francisco called the Homeless Coalition. Now we only do coalitions to end coalitions, but back then we were new. And fucked around with Keith and them in Homes Not Jails, and just been doing this shit for a long time. About 15 years ago, this is Ian, my coworker.
Hi, Ian.
About 15 years ago, a bunch of us sort of, like, I like to joke that we're the ALEC of poor people's groups.
Right on.
So we do, like, a lot of the local groups are doing the same research. They're creating their own artwork, they're creating their own messaging, and it's really disparate because they're all in different communities and they're not talking to each other, and not for any fucked up reason, just they don't have the capacity, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the internet shit, they don't have all that shit. And so about 15 years ago, there was an idea to create regional offices of a national campaign. And Chicago, New York, me out of San Francisco, a bunch of us got together and put together a proposal to create regional offices for the National Coalition for the Homeless. Luckily, or whatever, they didn't want to do it. Mainly the regional offices would have dictated who was on the board of directors of the national camp, so we probably in hindsight could have realized that they weren't going to do it. But the people in LA and Seattle and Denver and like that I had been talking to about being the regional on the West Coast were like, fuck it, we want to do it. And so we created RAP. We have a whole network of artists that work with us, so the organizers decide on the campaigns and the message that they want, and then the artists, and you see all these posters here. That's a small sampling, but it actually works pretty effectively. If you're in LA and you see these posters and then you go to Portland and you see the same posters, you start to get an idea that maybe these motherfuckers are talking to each other. Like maybe there's something happening here. And then we do, and this is where Ian comes in, we're down to get rid of business improvement districts. You guys have some fucked up ones here, but they're all over the place. And it's publicly funded, it's fucking amazing how powerful they become. 90% of their money is security. And basically they're transforming neighborhoods into business improvement districts. Like, they're not hiding their shit. They're very direct. In California, it took them 4 attempts, 4 different state bills to get where they can plug into property tax dollars. And they're funded with property tax dollars, and the only people that vote on creating them are the property owners.
Right.
The general public has no say. So if we wanted to access property tax dollars to build housing, we would need 65% of the general public to vote yes. These guys can access property tax dollars with 50% of the property owners signing a petition in favor of creating the shit.
Yeah.
And it's legally mandated property taxes that are paid and collected by the government and turned over 100% to the businesses. Sorry.
That's amazingly corrupt.
It's fucking unbelievable. It's diabolical and brilliant at the same fucking time. And you can be both. Like, and these guys are clear, and they are pushing. We have a thing that we did with UC Berkeley Law School that you can see the number of anti-homeless laws go way the fuck up since '94 when they started getting property tax dollars to fund business improvement districts. There's a direct correlation that cities, this is neoliberalism at its best. We were on fucking, what was it, Democracy Now. You know, Reagan's wet dream of neoliberalism. That's what we're living right now.
Yeah.
And that ain't gonna be good for fucking poor people, not just homeless people. And our thing is to really connect this to what is at the core of it. Not just talk about fucking helping the homeless. I was homeless for 6 fucking years. I'm not saying compassion is bad. But we don't need nobody's charity. We don't need nobody's fucking help. We need human rights. And we need to decommodify housing and healthcare and education. Those are 3 things that benefit everybody. You know, nothing ends fucking homelessness like a home. And we seem to be talking about everything but that. And now with Marbut taking over the fucking federal programs, and they're gonna be releasing a federal plan written by Carson and Trump and Marbut, we're fucked. Like, we need to get rid of whatever fucking separates us and get our shit together and identify who the fuck is repping us in DC. And I don't mean the politicians, I mean the fucking poverty motherfuckers. Like, there's some serious shit going on where for 37 years we've been tweaking how to do fucking shelters as an answer to homelessness. And it wasn't a lack of shelters that created the shit in the first place. It was massive disinvestment at the federal level in affordable housing funding. And then poor people became fucking homeless, and then you had Hope 6, and then you had choice neighborhoods, and then you had all these other fucking things that came along with it. Democrat, Republican, neoliberalism isn't a political party. It's a mindset. It's government working in the best interest of corporate entities. And that mindset is driving, so we have tax breaks and tax credits and low-income housing tax credits and mortgaging public housing in order to fund public housing for poor people. How do you commodify public housing and say it's in the best interest of poor people? It doesn't make any fucking sense when you cut through the bullshit. And so we're right now in San Francisco, LA, Portland, Denver, and Sacramento and Oakland, you have citywide fucking coalitions that are formed, call it whatever you want, but I'm using that term, that are based in stopping sweeps. That's the core of the fucking entity. And anybody that doesn't want to fight around that doesn't need to join the fucking party. Because it's amazing how at the federal level, the national level, that's not the shit people are talking about. And in the federal plans, that's not the fucking priority. And Marbut, this guy that's running federal shit now, that's releasing a plan on January 15th, has already created programs based in jails, taking vacant jails and turning them into fucking homeless programs. That's his mindset. And that's, you know, if you look at local governments, they tend to follow the federal funding. Well, if that's where the money is, that's what we're gonna do. And that's how we get these asinine 10-year plans and continuum of care plans and homeless management information systems. What the fuck is that? But it's the fucking wave. And there's a million consultants making them millions of dollars implementing that shit. And it's all about following the federal money. And that kicks down to our level. And what they're gonna be doing is massive fucking institutionalized, Newsom's executive order, like they're gonna be institutionalizing people that are in the street. And if you don't go into the institution, you go to fucking jail. And they're literally talking about making it a 1-year penalty, misdemeanor incarceration for being fucking homeless.
See, I'm going to jail, Keith.
I told you that was what.
We're all going to fucking jail.
Yeah, we're screwed.
I'm going to jail.
And you look at like what's happening at University Avenue exit up in Berkeley. Like there's over 100 homeless people outside that are like, you know, they're calling themselves, where do we go?
There we go.
You know, we're not fucking leaving. And that shit's gotta be supported. Like that shit should be what the focus of.
Moms for
Right,
Housing
yeah,
isn't
the
leaving
Open
either,
Moms.
and they're probably going to get arrested out of the building pretty quick. Like they have 5 days as of, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And they're
As
refusing
of
to
yesterday,
leave.
it was yesterday, yeah. Yeah, I mean, cause really, like, we're at that, it's been 30 fucking 7 years. Like, literally, I was there, I'm old. San Francisco opened its fucking homeless program in October of 1982. It's 2020. Like, where the fuck you supposed to go?
Yeah.
You know, and all of this artificial bullshit about, well, if we just do the case management differently, or if we just do our intakes differently, or if we just record shit better, or document, put chips in motherfuckers, I don't know. But like it's everything but giving people a fucking decent option to sleeping outside.
Right.
You know, and for some reason in the early 80s our DNA changed. And a whole bunch of people decided, oh, it's so much nicer living outside. That ain't what the fuck happened. And it's gotta get to a place where, you know.
Excuse me.
There's another. Take another chair.
Sit here, so you can get another chair.
Take this one.
Oh, okay.
Double check.
Whoops. Here.
We need some music to go with this.
Musical chairs.
Sorry about that.
How many organizers does it take to get a chair?
You get in a conference room. We don't go to conferences.
But I really think people like the Moms for Housing, like, these should be our heroines. You know, like, this is what we're talking about. And if they feel supported and they know that they're not just these 4 women by themselves
Right.
up against the fucking system, but they know that there's a whole bunch of communities out there that are doing the same thing and supporting the same message and seeing them as the proud, amazing people that they are. That's how we can start to build. You can't just tell people, oh, you're empowered. dang, you know, I'll see you later. You know,
Bless
like,
you.
that's not cutting it. You know, and it kind of seems like, you know, this was the hell of the war on poverty was creating the nonprofit industrial complex. You know, you want to kill a revolution, fund it. And you can tell it what to do and what not to do. And so many of these organizations were created out of the experience of people that are living out in the fucking street that are now working for their funders. They're not working for the people out in the fucking street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part of it that we need to flip. You know, and
That's what's happened to me.
Right, you got the catch committee right
Now
there.
I'm working for that place. I'm not sure
Oh.
if they're helping or not.
Caseworker.
I'm a case manager
yeah, I was too.
for San Jose's first permanent supportive living place, 2nd Street Studios.
Yeah, and I was too, and I what I experienced at Hospitality House in the Tenderloin up in San Francisco was people coming in and saying, I'm not like those motherfuckers,
Right.
pointing to their brothers and sisters in
Yeah.
the drop-in center. I'm trying to get my shit together, and then they would go out to the drop-in center and the next person would come and point to them and say, I'm not like those motherfuckers, I'm trying to get my shit together. And I realized they're all right. Like, they're reacting to what they see in the newspaper, what they hear on the radio, what they see on TV. And they're saying, but that's not me. But they're believing that it's everybody else. And that's the part that I think just through community building is like, we're all fucking part of the same community.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not how we're being projected. It's not just that you're different, it's we're different than what's being projected about us. And just start building that sense of we're not those motherfuckers as opposed to I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so entrenched that they believe it. And case managers get burnt out. You know, so make it so that, you know, you can come up from the streets and get paid to help motherfuckers that are in the streets. But it's a means to an end. And the end should be making sure that nobody's in the fucking street. Like, and that's gonna take fighting. You know, there's a reason why the 501c3 shit, the nonprofit shit, it says charity, not political. But you can't address poverty and racism and classism without getting to the political. You know, you just can't do it. And if case managers think that they're gonna fix every motherfucker that comes through their door, they're gonna burn out. And they're gonna start identifying the problem as the people coming through the door, not as the system that created the fact that people have to come to the door in the first place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If people had access to housing and healthcare, they wouldn't need fucking case managers. You know, I mean, what's a case manager do? They try to get people what it is they need. If people had access to that shit, they wouldn't need a case manager to help them get what it is that they fucking need. So as case managers, you get an amazing overview of just how fucked up the system is. But that's gotta translate to using that information to change the system, not to get more case managers. And it's you know, I was asked to leave a couple of jobs when I was a case manager. I was really good at getting people SSI, because at least there you had a hearing, and you could manipulate the court system, and I'm a white boy in America, so I could manipulate that motherfucker like no one's business. And the judges would believe me, because I would have it on letterhead. You notice how, like, if the shit's written on letterhead, it must be true? So you bullshit, you know? But you do it really well written, and you do it on letterhead, and they buy the shit. But
If
if
you're a
a,
case manager, they believe you.
it's amazing, you know?
It's
It-
interesting.
It's really hypocritical as fuck.
It is.
Because the person says it themselves, no one believes them for shit.
Right.
But the little white case manager puts it on letterhead and it must be true.
Who's been there for
And it's
2
the
weeks?
same fucking thing. You know, and that's how the system fucking works.
Yeah.
Alright.
You know, and that's where I feel that, you know, we need to start calling this out, because it's not unique to Santa Cruz, it's not unique to San Francisco, it's not unique to LA. You know, they're saying the cops are passing out flyers in Skid Row saying that all the tents need to be gone by February 12th. There's thousands of people living on the streets in Skid Row.
Yeah.
Literally thousands of people.
Tens of thousands.
And all of their belongings and all of their tents need to be gone by February 12th, or the cops are gonna start arresting. It's like the cops have already been shooting, they've already been beating motherfuckers up, they've already been throwing their shit away when they sweep the streets, clean the streets. You know, and now it's all gonna be gone by February 12th, because they
wrote
passed
it.
an edict.
How does that work with Martin versus Boise though? And
Well, they're not saying all the people have to be gone by February 12th. And so Boise doesn't apply to people's belongings. It says you can't sweep the people without somewhere to go. And that Boise has kicked in a whole series, Sacramento as well.
But it uses
Camping paraphernalia.
But it uses camping. You can't camp without supplies.
Oh, that's your opinion.
Well, I know
That's-
there's some holes
that's-
in there that could be
That's,
argued.
you know, and that's the thing about relying on the court
I
system.
think that's why they wanted a narrowing, but we didn't get it.
Exactly. And it's also why relying on the courts to defend poor people is a dangerous fucking game.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can yourself.
Well, they tend to get really detailed and really specific about a specific process. You know, it isn't against the law to criminalize poor people. You know, so, and when we did the Right to Rest Act in California, Colorado, and Oregon, and we still have the bill and we're still gonna be running it whenever we get a fucking chance. You know, it was, you can't criminalize people for standing, sitting, laying
Lying.
down, sleeping, or eating. That those can't be in the penal code. Those are not criminal offenses. So long as they're done in a non-obstructive manner, period. If I'm standing here and I ain't bothering nobody, fuck you, leave me alone.
Exactly.
We get our asses kicked every fucking time we introduce that bill. And I mean 10-1 type votes in the committees. And the League of Cities and the Business Improvement Districts and the fucking pigs and the mayors, this fucking asshole from here testified against us. Not the one that's here
Mike
now.
Rocken,
Which
A
one?
while
yeah,
ago.
he went in for the county board of supervisors, and he wasn't anybody, right? But he testified that the scent line
Yeah,
laws here in
bullshit.
Santa Cruz were working fine, and nobody here even knew he did that.
Yeah,
And he's a Marxist, or Marxist.
that's how he introduced
left-wing
it.
guy.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Feminist, socialist.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, there's a lot of people that really see the power and strengths of poor people so long as they're in some other country.
Yeah,
When that poor person's in their doorway, all of a sudden they're fucking bummed.
yeah,
And that's what this guy reminded us of.
yeah.
You know, yeah, you see the beauty of poverty and poor people, and just so long as it's not in your fucking block.
Yeah,
But we keep bringing it back, you know, and we'll keep running it because it just doesn't make sense to us that if everybody who stood still got a loitering ticket, the loitering laws would be off the books in 2 fucking seconds. But just by virtue of the fact that those laws exist, they're gonna be discriminatorily enforced. And they're gonna be used as a means to target certain people. And, you know, that's as old as America. Like this shit, you look at the anti-Okie laws and the sundown towns
Loitering,
and the
tipping.
Japanese American Exclusion Act and the ugly laws, and you look at the colonizing history of this fucking country, this pattern and practice of using laws that supposedly apply to everybody to target a specific subset of the population that you want to get rid of and discriminatorily enforce those laws that's colonizing. Like, that's how the shit goes. And so we like feel like anytime we're talking about the issue of lack of housing, we need to be putting it in that context. And we need to be understanding that this is a violation of the human rights of people, and it's the fabric of this country is to violate those rights in order to dominate and control and dehumanize those segments of the population. And what's coming down now is gonna make sundown towns like look passé.
Yeah, like we would want them.
You know? Well, I mean, how is it different when you say, well, those people need to leave, then don't come into our town in the first place?
Right.
What's the fucking difference?
Yeah.
It's semantics. And it isn't the mayor of the month or the supervisor of the fucking month. It's how America works. It's what neoliberalism is all about. And the militarization of our police department. You look at the United Fruit Company was the testing ground for neoliberalism in South and Central America. And they referred to it as banana republics. But they didn't have local police departments, they had military. And you look at the militarization of our local police departments today, and you look at how shit worked then, and it's really, really scarily fucking similar.
Yeah.
You know, it's really not that different. We have local police departments with armored personnel carriers
Like here.
and tanks.
Like here.
You know, and if you don't think they'll use it, go to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Talk to Move.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't get those toys and not use them. And
Waco.
yeah,
Like our Bearcat.
well, Move was just like a fucking group in a house that got bombed.
Yeah.
But
And everybody put in prison for decades or life.
yeah,
Or killed.
or dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's gonna become the norm, not an extreme example that you can cite 25 years later
Right,
and just show how old you are and shit.
Yeah.
But it's gonna become more and more the norm. And you can see it with all the private security through the bid districts, coupled with the police department, coupled with bid districts that are funding community courts. So the bid gets you arrested, you go to a court that the bid funds, and then you do public service work working for the bid.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
And it's not unintentional, it's not just happenstance. It's thought out and it's deliberate and it's very intentional and it's really well funded, it's really well organized. You know, I've stopped calling these guys stupid. They're not stupid.
Great.
They're fucking evil, but they're not stupid. And we can't afford to be stupid anymore. We can't afford to be duplicating each other's work all the time, which is why they created RAP. It's like, we're doing all this shit and we're all doing it. So instead, you do it and give it to us. And it just helps reduce the fucking overload of shit because, you know, they have think tanks, they have research, they have universities, they have all these tools at their disposal that we don't. And so we were created to fill that void, at least for this small number of groups that we work with. And then anyone that wants to access it, because all this shit is on the website, it's all free, we don't sell information. It's too valuable to be sold. You need to get the shit out there. And 90% of it's in English and Spanish. Soon it'll all be in both languages. But it's all there and it's all free. And we'd love to, you know, fuck around with you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, work together.
Thanks.
We accept.
Right. So in Monterey County, they've got a coalition of homeless service providers, kind of a continuum of care for for where I'm at in Salinas, a little further south. They came up with a draft position on how jurisdictions handle sweeps. So they want to see written notice as to exactly what needs to be mitigated for health and safety for them to even post it to begin with. They want to see trash cans and porta potties put down, give them at least a week or two to mitigate those issues, and if they do sweep them, put them somewhere else. So if that does become the position of the service providers, how because my whole thing is organized space. If people who trash and food is in this place, then you should just get passed over, for a sweep. When the cops roll up, and that's what I'm actually trying to do. Is like our union card, that says I'm a union member. I do this much minimal bullshit, which is basically I'm responsible. I don't have a blanket of trash around me, and I'm not doing drugs in front of you, so leave me alone, Do you see that as something that can resonate with a lot of campgrounds? If people are being self-responsible, then that just creates more legitimacy as to what is your health and safety issue? Why are you bothering me?
I haven't seen a really receptive response from local governments to providing porta potties and trash receptacles. That's been a big fucking issue at University Avenue.
But they're there.
Well, but you have to have them there in order to use them. And in my experience, and we used to see this all the time, they let shit get out of hand in order to justify sweeping.
Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
That's exactly the pattern, yeah.
And that goes back to the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s.
That's
it did
as
the same
old
thing,
as
yeah.
the sky.
Yeah.
Well, it's widely used tactic around here in Santa Cruz
Yeah, and everywhere.
for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And
Camps, lack of restrooms, the garbage, the whole thing. Let's not
Yeah.
provide them, and then let's talk about how much trash and
Yeah,
food
make
we
sure
have all over
there's
the
no
place.
toilet there.
Right.
And then you have a health and safety issue, and you can.
And now we have to
justify
punish
sweeping.
people for creating this health and safety issue,
All of
rather
you.
than provide toilets.
And what I do worry about though, and I have seen with some of the groups that are organized, is the homeless people start picking and choosing who's the good versus who's the bad. And the disabled people and the addicted people tend to get fucked by their own people. And that's where I just get a little nervous about okay, well, we're gonna be clean and sober and we're gonna be this.
Exactly.
And life doesn't work that way. So it just, I think taking people at their face value, this is who the fuck they are. And if there's people living somewhere, it was fucking funny as shit when there was the shutdown, the federal government shutdown
Right.
a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. All of a sudden you started seeing articles about how the national parks had trash issues and people were going to the bathroom outside, and it was yeah,
Free for all of the
motherfucker,
parks.
Exactly.
you don't have trash and bathroom facilities. People are still gonna produce trash, and they're still gonna go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And that got resolved by opening that shit back up.
Yeah.
But somehow with homeless people, it doesn't get resolved by providing those things. It gets resolved by getting rid of the homeless people.
Right.
Yeah.
But the common sense, the logic piece of it just seems to get fucking lost.
But they know what they're doing, like you were saying before.
No, they're smart,
They
they
realize
know what they're doing. It's just the common sense factor that's missing. It's driven me crazy, I think.
Yeah, they act like
But the
they're
solutions
stupid,
are there,
they're-
but they're just constantly, just massively evaded.
And here in Santa Cruz, they like to talk a lot about the solution.
Right now, we have 6
Endless
different
talk.
organizations talking about solutions to homelessness in this.
But providing absolutely
Yeah.
nothing,
And
not one
and
porta
virtually
potty.
not one homeless person on any of these 6 conversations.
And then you got the vigilante groups that feed off of all of that.
Yeah,
You know, like.
yeah, we get reports all the time, people injured, attacked.
You know, we
About
have,
doing
you know,
this,
take back Santa
Take back
Cruz
Santa
and all
Cruz,
that,
I've seen their shit.
and, you know, next, you know.
Next
Next
door.
door's
Yes.
becoming bad.
What I was thinking about doing was getting some garbage bags at the Dollar Tree and put them on, and putting on, stenciling on people poop. And then, you know, make like one of those little, things like they have, like the poop fairy doesn't work here for dogs. Make one for like people, so people can use them and then tie them up and put them in the trash
Yeah.
can, so people don't just poop and stick them in cans.
Someone went and put adult diapers all over town on all the poles not too long ago in case you had an emergency. Couldn't find a bathroom. Depends, all over town.
I think that's a good idea.
I wonder who did that.
That's
I
an
don't
expensive
know. I don't
thing.
know who could do that. Somebody did that
Yeah, that was,
to make a
It
point.
was cool.
that was a good use of union dues.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
The series of guidelines, Wes, that you're talking about, I think it's hokum. I mean, it's coming from people who are, it's cover for what they're doing, what you're talking about, Paul, which I think is what's going on. Lots of plans, but the actual reality is fund police forces, fund essentially jails and, I don't know, toxic waste sites as campgrounds, and, you know, army bases out in the sticks and move people out to there. I mean, what's your experience?
That's
with
what
that?
Marbot is gonna be pushing.
Yeah.
That's what
That's
he
what
wants.
this
And
guy's gonna be pushing.
Yeah, and the LA Times just yesterday said that Marbot and the mayor of LA are all in the county.
Garcetti,
Yeah, Garcetti and the county, supervisor, they're all into it now. And they're
And I
working
think-
together and they're pretending, as I've been thinking all along, they were always pretending that, oh, the liberal Democrats are so terrible over here and we're gonna have this humane response and Trump is so bad, and reality it's exactly the same.
Right, they're all
program.
They're trying to
corporatists.
spin it to look humane. I
Yeah.
think that's what Fred Keeley was trying to get at.
Yeah,
And I think we kind of even know the location where they're thinking about putting this first one. It's right over there on Coral Street. He asked us what we would think about a big facility for homeless, like a giant campus over there.
yeah, like a five
Somebody's
size,
been quietly working with here to
or
do
down
this
in
to us.
Roundtree.
I thought it was down in Buena Vista.
Yeah, it'll probably
where
go
the
down, it'll
prison-
be South County is what I think.
Get it out of our county,
Yeah.
North County.
And it takes us back to the early 80s. I mean, CCNB was like 500, 600 people, and
Yeah.
that was considered the norm.
Yeah.
And they're fucking intense.
Yeah.
Explain
You
what
know.
CCMD is.
Oh, I mean, that's a shelter that was created in response to organizing by a guy named Mitch Snyder and a whole bunch of other people. That Center for Community Nonviolence.
Yeah.
And they got an old Department of Education building that was in DC
Washington,
that was
DC.
turned into a shelter. That
It's
was
massive, yeah.
self-run, self-managed. It didn't have all of the rules and regulations that most had, but now it does. Like now it's become an institutionalized place. But it was this idea that you're gonna have these big ass places for people to go, and then the economy's gonna get better and we'll all move back indoors.
Right.
Like, I mean, and that's where it's really frustrating for old fucks like me to like hear this thing about, well, if there's a shelter, that'll take care of it.
Right.
Like, no.
Nobody's working on the reasons that put people in
Yep.
there at all, to begin with. The
Well,
rents
they
and the
do-
wages
Representative
are very
Omar,
rarely discussed in these conversations.
well, the only one that I've seen in 30 fucking years is this bill that Ilhan Omar has just introduced, Homes for All. And it's like over $1 trillion over 10 years, and all of it is permanent housing. No vouchers, none of that kind of shit. It's all invested into public housing and social housing. And that's all any of these 6 fucking groups need to talk about, is how do we fucking get that passed?
Right.
And actually, now with the motherfucker running
She's from
HUD today,
Somalia, so
as-
she's seen some real suffering.
huh?
She's from Somalia. She's seen some
Yeah.
real suffering, so that's probably.
Well, and also she apparently is listening to fucking poor people.
Right.
You know, like,
Yeah,
like, we got this thing on our website called Without Housing. It's when we were first starting RAP, it was like, God, the last thing homeless people need is another fucking coalition, right? So what the fuck are we doing this for? And so we did this report called Without Housing, and it was a really simple report. What happened right before '82 when we opened all these shelters? Reagan cut the fuck out of affordable housing funding. Then we opened all these shelters. Since then, we've actually destroyed more public housing than we've built since then. Thanks Clinton and the fucking contract on America and shit. But like, we've never seen that as a cause and effect. You wipe out this funding stream, poor people end up in the street. You want to deal with that? Replenish that funding stream so people have an option to sleeping out in the fucking street. And if the only people sleeping outdoors were doing so choicefully, there wouldn't be enough there that anybody would give a fuck.
Right.
You know, like,
It's like
this
5 people.
just wouldn't be a fucking issue.
yeah.
There may be some, but there wouldn't be enough
It's a small drop in the
that
barrel.
anybody would care. You know, and
Just like in '82, when, you know, there was virtually, didn't even count people living outside.
no, you didn't need
I
to.
think
have
I've
them
met like
to-
3 people maybe in all my history of working around here that say, oh, well, I like living like this. This is my choice, and I would, you know, turn down a better
And
situation.
I know all 3 of those people.
I mean, like, what's scary too is the real situation, like, you know, 9/11 or what was it, you know, the Twin Towers falling and all that. It's like, people keep forgetting, like, all this is like totally scripted out from history. It's like, it's already inevitable, like, all these things happen. You're right, people do sit in a room like this and discuss these things from all over the world, you know, like, this has to happen, we have to get these people's attention on this so we can, you know, steal this amount of gold that's there, you know, and all these things happening, and then, like, you're right, how come people can't just build houses and that we own them? Like, I remember, like, you used to buy a house and then it belonged to your family. It would just stay in your family. You teach your family how to work on that house, and it's generation after generation. But then they offer you money, the bank will offer you money, a loan against your house, and then no longer the house isn't yours anymore. And I don't know how that got away from us. It seems like the government should definitely give it back to the people.
What has RAP done in the last, in its existence, you think, that has been most successful in terms of, if at all, in stopping sweeps in different cities, or helping those groups to resist that, or slow the sweeps?
Well, that's not necessarily their main focus, though.
Well, I mean, I think if you ask the local groups that we work for, we've been a support system in fighting the sweeps. I don't know that anybody can say they've stopped sweeps, because sweeps are everywhere.
So where do you feel you've been most successful in that kind of support?
More in a solidarity capacity. Like, we've worked on litigation, we've worked on legislation, we've helped draft agreements that then get broken. So there's that kind of shit, but that shit to me is more like the technical piece of it. I think the fact that Denver Homeless Out Loud, LA Can, the San Francisco Coalition, you know, Sacramento Homeless Organizing Committee all hang out together and work together and know each other and support each other is probably where RAP has been the most quote unquote successful in terms of building solidarity and building power.
Any connections with the new Union of the Homeless that has been working in different cities?
Yeah. To, you know,
I'm in a meeting right now, but I'll call you right back.
I go to their shit and, you know, talk on the conference calls with Willie and Anthony and those guys. Marcus in North Carolina, I work with a lot. They use a lot of our shit.
Poor People's Campaign?
Yeah, and I roll my eyes, but that's just because I'm so fucking old and I'm tired of meetings. But they're good people, and the shit that they're talking about is relevant shit. I wish the Poor People's Campaign had a stronger focus around homelessness than it ended up with, in terms of their 4 pillars. But I still work with them because you look at the National Coalition and the National Law Center and the National Alliance and you say, well, fuck, I'd much rather work with the Poor People's Campaign. Just because they're closer to a spiritual aspect of the fucking work. And actually having it come from the heart as opposed to a technical assistance fucking thing. And I think that it's gonna take that. Like, I think we need to be fighting this shit from the heart, not from the fucking
math.
Poor People's Campaign never like does anything, like, you need to get a hold of him. He should be working with me.
Oh, because Chris is having a crisis, that's why.
Yeah,
So,
pretty bad.
Yeah, I heard that too, something about the location.
Hayes Healthy blew up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, I just think we need to, if you're literally talking from the perspective with the people and identifying community members that are using your shit and saying the same shit you're saying, then you've got an organizing justification. If you're speaking on behalf of, then you need to shut the fuck up. And I think we need to be really careful about calling people out as poverty pimps unless they're really fucking poverty pimps, because I think sometimes we go after each other. And I remember like back in the day when Homes Not Jails, Food Not Bombs, the Homeless Coalition, we were having a lot of conflicts trying to work together until we got out of each other's fucking business,
All right,
you know?
yeah,
And then just started identifying where we agreed on shit and working on that.
all right.
And all of a sudden, the takeovers were a lot more successful. The solidarity fucking demos around Food Not Bombs, getting arrested, being out in the middle of the fucking pond or whatever.
That was fun.
You know, like all of a sudden it became like we could actually fucking fight together
Yeah,
instead of fighting with each other. And that's where I think the focus is for the RAP members right now. Is, yeah, we know we're not all the fucking same, that's okay.
You know what I noticed too is, I think it'd be a good idea to like, it's like you were talking about addicts and people with, you know, medical problems. It'd be nice if we like focused on trying to legalize just drugs, period. And then instead of incarcerating people, arresting them, sending them to prison so they learn how to like work on cars and work on building houses in prison, and then when they're released back into the, when they have friends outside, and there's all these sub-programs like you're saying, they get released back into society, a productive member of society, and then they go back to using drugs again, and then they just get arrested again. Seems like if we legalize drugs altogether and said, you know, here, why don't you grow poppies or grow
I think a
opium,
lot of
you
people
know?
have been wanting that for a long time, but I don't know if we'll ever get to that here.
There's so much money
I
in
don't
the
think so,
drug
but
yeah,
enforcement
pharmaceutical
industry.
my
industry
opinion.
and law enforcement industry and all
You can't get people to organize enough to have like
that. They won't even have negotiating
Yeah, I
chapters.
don't even think
Santa
we're,
Cruz,
Oh,
I don't
we're
even
really
close
working
to
against
that.
legal exchange.
yeah.
yeah. We can't even get factual, you know, data to be looked at, like harm reduction strategies and stuff. They avoid
Yeah, they won't
factual data that's for health and safety.
Yeah.
Like they won't even look at it. Because it's a needle.
It definitely has been a solution in other countries, but it's like, you know, in Portugal, but it's not like, it'd be hard to get our puritanical America to buy into something like that.
We show successful models of all sorts of different things to this city. I mean, cheaper survival encampments, cheaper, all sorts of different successful models that other cities, countries, whatever are doing, and they just refuse.
I mean, like, could you go downtown and get signatures? Can you ask people for signatures?
I mean, you could, but I don't think it would work.
No one would give
Energy.
a
Like you said,
crap, yeah.
it's different when you have it on a letterhead, you know, like it's an official, you know, document, and you got a badge around your neck, and people stop and all of a sudden, you know,
Well, you know, the last head of the health department was trying to get a self-injection center in town. He couldn't get anything like that. Then he tried to get, he got like, the county got $25 million for mental health services. He couldn't get one site in the entire county.
They don't want things like that here.
And he was like, and he was all about that, but he didn't get, you know, there was no political will
We've
to
spent
allow, you know, so the same people that
8
are
months
saying it's
here.
not a homeless problem, it's a drug addict problem. Also, the second you say, oh, well, we'll put like a drug rehab place over here. Oh, no, you won't.
I'm surprised Marlboro or the tobacco company hasn't like
We-
applied for those like.
We spent the
That's
last
an
8
idea,
months
yeah.
trying to get 2 porta potties in locations that they really need to be in, and we still don't have those. That's how
Right,
much
wasn't-
we're moving forward here.
And
And
wasn't
when
Cash
Keith
supposed to
rented
be
one
something?
himself, they took it away.
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
happened, that's happened in a couple of places.
Twice. Once-
Yeah, we've lost 2, yeah, we've had 2, well, we got a, we set up a camp, we reset up Camp.
Phoenix.
Yeah, we set
Phoenix.
our own survival
And
encampment.
we got the only wheelchair accessible toilet downtown, 24-hour toilet.
The only place for disabled people to come in the middle of the night who are in crisis, the only place, shut us down after 5 days.
5 days.
5 days.
Yeah. I think the real issue that was freaking them out was that it was people that lived on the streets that organized.
Because we were good
This.
at it. I have full documentation of that whole experience. We did really, really good. And I think that the city just could not have that turn out to be something positive.
Yeah.
That would look real bad on them.
Now the new thing that they're deciding to, like a lot of people started camping at this place where the van comes to pick up everyone to take them to the shelters, because you know, obviously not allowed to walk into a shelter. You have to meet at this corner, and then there's a lot, but it's pretty visible.
Because it's so public, it's right there.
Yeah, and they just
Downtown
like somehow covertly decide, bypass city council and everything, and started leveling this whole block to build luxury condos. And even though it was voted against, and it's right next to where the people are being picked up. So they're, you know, at Laurel and Front Street. So now they're gonna move everybody to you have to go to the county jail
The
to get
police,
picked
yeah.
up to go to the shelter.
The jail.
Do that.
So now they're all gonna hang
employees-
out in the parking lot of
and
the
they-
jail while waiting for the shelter
And
shuttle.
the jail employees do
Fucking
not
Margaret
appreciate it.
already
Yes.
runs Santa Cruz.
Yeah, there's
That's right out
an
of this
evolution
new guy's
happening here.
handbook.
It's all
Yeah.
leading to bad.
Well, you know, about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe less than that, I did these Public Records Act requests. And so the coalition of people attacking the homeless started spreading this email of an interview with Robert Morbott about how he was the solution to homelessness in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, when they were arresting Food Not Bombs and
Yeah.
Arnold Abbott down there. And they were like, oh yeah, we got to hire Robert Morbott to come to and shut down Food Not Bombs. You know, the Food Not Bombs is enabling everyone. And then of course they came up with, oh, Food Not Bombs is like giving everyone hepatitis A.
I don't get how anybody's even listening to this guy. Like, what does he even know about homelessness? He's just like this opinionated guy.
Pepsi
Well, he
Plus.
slept outside 3 days
I don't get it.
in San Antonio, Texas.
He's a consultant,
Yeah. 100. Is,
so therefore he's an expert.
But
And
some cities
local
actually-
governments pay him a lot.
A lot of money.
Just because he's highly opinionated and hateful
Right.
on the subject, he's not educated on it at all.
They
Rush
like to be
Limbaugh's
nice.
still on the radio every day.
He was
No.
a fellow under the Bush administration
Yeah.
in their homeless programs. When he came out of college, he got a fellowship to work under the Bush administration on homelessness. And he's parlayed that into a fucking career.
Yeah. And he charged like Pinellas County in St. Petersburg, Florida, like $200,000 to advise them. And what they did is they took the county jail, the abandoned one that was next to the new one, and opened it up as a wraparound
A
center.
transformational center.
Transformational center, yeah. And the sheriff department ran it, and they provided very interesting statistics. So then he was trying to get Sarasota to hire him. And Sarasota like did a whole like research project on how well the Pinellas County one, and they said, no, we're not doing it. But they snookered Daytona, they just snookered,
Fucking Humboldt hired them, they paid them
Yeah.
$50,000 to write their homeless plan. And the plan ended up being that you had to prove that you were a resident of the community prior to becoming homeless in order to access their winter shelter program. And that was stirring some shit. So the county said, all right, fuck it then, we just won't have a winter shelter
That's
program.
what Brent wants.
right?
That's what he wants written into any type of encampment proposal is proof of residency so that we're only helping our locals and that people can't come here and get into one of our
Right.
shelters.
Yeah.
Which I don't think makes any
He
sense or
advocates
is
for that?
helpful at
Yeah,
all.
that's just,
Well, but if you look at welfare in general, I mean, goes back to the.
Well, it goes by character.
Welfare.
Got a church service.
You have to be a person of that area. But it also cuts out anybody who is,
But I mean, the mindset that nobody's gonna move from one town to another because I heard your shelters are better.
no,
that's a national myth.
I've
No.
not met that person.
right,
Like, there's a million other reasons they might move from one town to another.
right.
But I've not
And if they need
ever,
shelter, they're not gonna be able to get it.
in
under these
37 years,
situations.
I've not had somebody say, oh, I just like the shelter. I heard the shelter, you know.
I've actually
I
heard
heard
that
you
a
serve
lot.
pizza at your
Not about
shelter.
shelter. I've heard it about the place,
You
I've
got
heard
pizza
about
on
the
Friday? I'm
accommodations, I've heard about the people.
I was
But a
like,
shelter's a fucking shelter.
I was homeless in Cleveland in January, and people were telling me how, because I'd be like living in the back of my truck, and then people go, oh yeah, all the homeless come here to Cleveland because we got the best services. And I'm like, what the hell, man, it's 5 degrees below zero, I don't think I'm moving out of
I
here.
should move to San Francisco. They probably have nicer shelter and I could probably make like $2 more per hour. I should probably do that.
And then in Florida, they have this whole program called iDignity. And it's like nice lawyers to help you get your Florida driver's license because you can't eat at a soup kitchen or stay at a shelter unless you have a valid Florida ID.
Good Lord.
And then when you go, the shelter in Orlando, there's 2 shelters, the city one and the Salvation Army one. And you get the first 3 days on the floor free. And then after that, you have to pay $15.50 a night to stay at the city shelter. And Salvation Army was $17.50 a night.
As well up in the hospital.
Well, the Motel 6 was $20 a night, so I chose that.
Right?
I got my own room, my own TV, and my own bathtub.
But God forbid we build something that's just designed to be affordable and dignified to take care of this need.
Yeah, so it's like and that's, yeah, it's really incredible. And then we had a person that used to eat with us here who was a resident of Marbutt's place in San Antonio. And his stories were just unbelievable. They have like all these private security in the place. He never got beyond the mat in the yard. So they have behavioral, modification, and you get up to, you'll eventually get like
Your own jail cell.
yeah, your own little room where you get with
Right.
3 other people on a bunk
But
bed.
until you can pass a drug test, you're out on the pavement in the
In
separate
the
location.
parking lot.
Yes, in the parking lot.
Do you have any recommendations, Paul, about, this again, getting back to what I asked before, most of the folks here in Santa Cruz outside are, in tents or on the sidewalks, or, in the bushes. Have there been places where there's been successful organizing around this, at least to protect them? That's why I keep getting back to sweeps, because unfortunately, that's where most folks are at right now.
Yeah.
You can talk about, oh, we want housing, of course. We want, education, we want medical care, yeah, they all should be your rights. But in the meantime, how do people defend themselves? Do you have any thoughts on that?
There we go.
I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, do I know of any examples of successfully, permanently stopping the sweeps? No.
Or for
First, they came for the homeless.
periods of time.
I mean, that's where I think they've been, I think checking out where do we go up at
Berkeley?
University in Gilman and
First
those,
they came for the home,
you know.
Yes.
First they came for the homeless,
Dignity
absolutely.
Village.
Um,
That's kind of became a,
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, you know. Right to serve, right to dream, you know, like there are places that came out of people that were sleeping outside organizing. Right to Dream got moved, but they got to stay together.
the Occupy movement, that's how first they came for the homeless developed.
Yeah, you know, so I mean, there's little pockets where, first they came for the homeless, like I think has been moved twice,
16 times, they say.
something like
16
that,
or
like.
17.
So, like, that's where, like, I think that, you know, with the right energy in the room at the moment, these little success stories can be created, but they're overwhelming number of fighting the sweeps and getting swept and then coming back and getting swept and coming back. And I do think that from what I've seen, the idea of coming back to the same place that people were swept and coming back and coming back and coming back, then sometimes you end up with a sanctioned encampment, they call it. But it's, you know, it's a real fucking heavy duty, demoralizing and then very empowering organizing process. Because you're gonna lose more than you're gonna win. And that's where I feel like the organizing needs to stay consistent, because I think sometimes with organizers, it's like, oh, well, we tried to stop that, it didn't happen, so I'm gonna go do this instead.
Yeah.
And you sort of end up going down this other path. And that it's not a one-shot deal. And it's not an instant gratification organizing campaign. It's an organizing campaign where people, like with the Right to Rest Act, we're gonna fucking keep losing for a while. But we're gonna keep bringing it back. Because it doesn't matter how many times they kick our ass, so long as the last thing that happens is this shit gets passed. And these things like sleeping are no longer considered criminal offenses. I mean, the fact that sleeping is a criminal offense, sitting on a sidewalk is fucking illegal.
Yeah, it's insane.
In our city, they actually passed an ordinance saying that that's where you belong is on the right of ways. And so we tested that because they're doing sweeps everywhere, which is why I asked that earlier question, how do we definitively that? But in that sweep of the park, they'll chase people 3-5 blocks away and still grab all their stuff. And so 2 ladies were on the sidewalk avoiding the sweep, trying to stay legal, and they still got tickets for trespassing for being on the sidewalk. And if they did that anyway, you're going to obstruct the sidewalk. People need to use it to pass. You don't want to be right up on the street. You want to be away from the street.
Right.
So that's we're just even trying to prove the point that even the city of Salinas can't even get their own laws right. But
This is Salinas you're talking about?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're just-
All the
How far
homeless
is
go
that from
there.
here?
70 miles, 50 miles?
Yeah, yeah.
They're just excuses for the police to do what they need to do, or what they want to do, or what residents ask them to do, some residents. I mean, it has nothing to do with the wording of the law, because they have 4 or 5 laws as they do in Santa Cruz. Right now, with they're not enforcing the sleeping ban here, but instead they're enforcing 5 other laws.
Right, they don't have to
Right.
enforce the sleeping ban. And if you remember back when he was explaining it, Chief Mills even said that these other tickets and citations are actually higher and hold more substance than this camping ordinance anyway. So they're more than happy to give out trespass, blocking the sidewalk and all that in lieu of camping ordinance.
Yeah, and
Because
he-
it's better for them.
It's a
Yeah, and he said
mystery.
it's not,
Right.
and he wants to make it even harsher, that in his proposal before city council, he thinks the trespassing laws are too lenient right now, and that they need to have much more repressive trespassing laws.
Keep them in jail.
It's really-
Well, that's where this, these guys sent in a ballot initiative. I think I sent it to the Food Not Bomb site.
Uh-huh.
This former assembly member Gatto is testing it. They've been doing phone calling, checking, surveys. But it would make homeless offenses misdemeanors and be a year in jail.
That's what they're working on now.
Yeah,
And that seems to be the trend, and Marbut is the same vein. But this thing might actually go on the ballot next year,
wow.
California ballot initiative. That it says a right to shelter
Yeah.
and a year in jail if you don't go into the shelter.
Correct.
And they're actually right now testing it and doing field polls, and getting good responses.
Yeah, yeah, they just, what Steinberg was just quoted like 3 days ago about the obligation to accept shelter again,
Yeah.
and so they kind of try, they're just keeping that along out there, obligation to accept shelter, and then some well-meaning people go, oh, that was just what they were saying like a year ago, and they go, no, it was just 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Another weird thing I noticed in the last 3 days is that the HUD has said that LA is the leader, has the highest number of homeless people.
New York.
And then they had another article, New York has the highest number of homeless people. And then there was, what was the other city that just has, so all these cities have the high, Washington DC has the highest number of homeless people. Seattle has, so there's like all these articles in the last week about how the most homeless people are in all these different towns.
I think they're just trying to ping all of those places on our radar and sort of like desensitize the community. So when they actually do something about it, in your mind you will have prepared for that, and you think at least these places need
Yeah, it's the
help.
weirdest thing that every city's saying that.
It's all agenda, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's also just organize or die. Like,
Yeah.
seriously. Like, sundown towns are not a thing of the past. And we're seeing what the guy that wrote the fucking Grapes of Wrath was talking about.
John Steinberg.
Yeah. Like that's the error we're entering into.
New slave laws.
And, it's gonna get fucking brutal. And it's like either put up or shut up, and calling out the fucking charity system and talking about human rights. Like, that's gotta be the fucking direction. Because individually, we're not gonna fucking win. And it just, for whatever reason, like during Hope 6, trying to organize with public housing residents and homeless people together, because they're both getting fucked, is fucking difficult. And you need to fucking get real about it. That, the system set up to address homelessness is creating it.
I've got to
Yeah,
go
we gotta
like,
go too.